This morning we woke up to 5 or 6 inches of fresh snow on the ground, and it's going to be a muddy, sloppy, wet kind of day, so I decided not to bother wallowing my way up to the blacksmith shop, but instead I'm going to work down here in the wood shop. And what I'm working on down here today is a beam for one of the weaving looms. This is an older loom my wife just acquired, and the beams are well worn. There are lots of grooves cut in the surface of the beam where the warp has gone across the beam year after year. Who knows how many hundreds of weavings were done on this loom. But all those grooves from the threads create a problem. So I'm putting a filler strip in that should resurrect the leading edge of that beam. So let's take a look at what this beam is, where it goes on the loom, show you what the other one looks like. Then we can take a look at what I'm actually doing to put the new filler strip in. So that beam goes right across here, and all of the warp threads that come across the loom come over the top of that beam and wrap around it. And that's why they tend to cut into the back of the beam. So it looks something like this. This is a different loom that has not worn out yet, although you can feel where the grooves are starting to form. And sooner or later, this one will need the same treatment. Well, hopefully that gives you a quick idea of what I'm up to and why I'm going to tackle this project. I'm very much an amateur as a woodworker, so don't necessarily take this as a how-to video. This is just me doing what I'm doing today and letting you folks come along to see what I'm up to. So the idea is to get rid of all these little grooves and notches that have been worn in here over the years. And to do that, I'm planing off one corner. I'm cutting a notch in here and I'm replacing it with a maple strip. And to cut that notch or rabbet, I'm using a Veritas rabbiting plane, which does a very nice job, but it will take a while. You notice I quit cutting when I get down here. There's a depth stop on the plane. So that should be full depth. That matches the previous piece. Well, that pretty well has the groove cut. This plane is really a pleasure to use, although it still took about an hour of actual work planing, and I took a few breaks in there too. But that all looks pretty close. This looks like it might be tipped in just a little bit, and that's something important to check. And make sure the plane was this way. There's a lot of muscle memory involved with this that I have not developed yet, so I'm still working on getting it all down just right. And my final few passes to make sure things are square and even will be with this big shoulder plane. And it's not going to take much. Okay, so I've ripped off a piece of this that's ready to go, and I'm going to make use of this beam that I've been using and just use it as a holder for this. And that way it'll be less floppy while I'm planing it. Things like this can really be problematic. And then I'll just clamp it in there. And it'll be out of the way to plane. Done with this now. And I'm just making one good smooth surface that'll actually be my glue joint on this. And I'll do that to 2 edges. Then once it's glued in, the glue is dry, then I'll plane it flush on both sides. One long smooth shaving, and that's all I need. That should then fit. It looks quite good. I think it's better than the first one was. Time for some glue. Okay, now it's time to glue this up, and for that I'm going to use hide glue. This is just a liquid brown hide glue, and the reason I'm using this is because with steam I can get this back apart. So if 5 or 10 years from now this board has worn to the point it needs to be replaced, instead of going through all of this trouble planing it, I should be able to just put some hot wet towels on it, kind of steam it, and hopefully pop this off, clean it up, put another one on. Should make it a lot easier to maintain in the long run. Since this is relatively thin stock, I want to make sure I clamp it up really well. So let me get a whole bunch of clamps. I remember Norm Abrams saying you can never be too rich, too pretty, or have too many clamps. And while I probably don't have too many clamps, I am sure I'm not too rich and definitely not too pretty. Well, this should be a good start anyways. So that should be a nice bead of glue. Make sure I put the plain side down where I wanted it. I can spread my glue around just by rubbing this back and forth. Well, no reason to take any chances. Now that this is clamped up, I can go back to the one I was working on when we first started the video. And this one just needs to be finished. I've already trimmed the ends off so it's flush with the end of the beam, and I've started planing this down. It's just a little bit high in a few places. So I need to finish planing the filler strip with the main beam. It doesn't need much more. In fact, it may have been all it really needed. Somebody will probably ask, this is a Stanley number 6 that I'm using. And then this surface needs to be rounded over. So I'm going to start just by taking the corner off, just like in blacksmithing. Start square, then I'll go octagon, and then I'll round it up. I think I'm actually going to switch to a number 5 plane, just set a little bit coarser. Move material a little faster, and then I'll go back to the number 6. Well, that's pretty much it for this project, unless it needs some oil or wax finish. And I'll check with Janet on that. I don't know if that would contaminate the weaving or not. But just a little bit of light hand sanding, and that should be it. Now, I know a lot of you out there are thinking, and have probably already typed in the comments, why didn't you use a table saw? Why didn't you use a router? Because I like using hand tools. It's really just that simple. And that's the reason I sold my table saw and most of my routers. If you like that video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. If you haven't done so already, I'd love it if you hit that subscribe button. But for me, I'm going to go ahead and clean up a little bit and call it a day. You folks take care out there, and we'll see you later.